Hi everyone, Mike Malatesta here, and welcome back to the How Did It Happen podcast. On this podcast, I dig in deep with every guest to explore the roots of their success, to discover not just how it happened, but why it matters. My mission is to find and share stories that inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you. On today's podcast, I'm talking with an amazing entrepreneur who got his first business started while he was still in high school. And he's worked with some of the greatest racing teams in history, and now he flies all over the world, sometimes in his own plane, providing detailing services to some of the biggest airlines and the wealthiest people on the planet.
I don't really like the word employees. I have no problem saying the F word, but the E word, it seems really offensive to me. So I like team members. I don't like the word employees. They always say, well, nobody will care about the business like the owner, right? Like nobody will do that. That's such bullshit. The guy who's in the inventory room, he knows the part number for damn near everything that's in there by heart. And well, I couldn't tell you the first part number that we have in our company, right?
Yeah.
So in that particular task, he cares more about that than anybody else in the company. Well, when you build up a company like that where people care more about their task within the organization than anybody else, well, then you've dispelled that myth that only the owner will care as much as because he's the owner.
There's definitely some ups and downs in David Allen's journey, and you'll hear all about some of them right now. Hey, David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Been a long time in the works here. So I told you guys a little bit about David in the intro. Let me tell you a little bit more about him, and then we'll get into kind of the uniqueness of this, for me at least. And then we'll get into the uniqueness of David as well. So David Allen is an aviator, an entrepreneur, and the founder of David Allen Certified and the Allen Groupe, correct?
Correct.
Okay. He started his first business at the age of 15, a mobile detailing company in Indianapolis, Indiana, focusing initially on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, providing cleaning services for drivers, motorhomes, and team transports. Today, he owns and operates companies in the US and Europe that specialize in detailing, disinfection, and protection services across multiple industries, but mainly focused on aviation. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. David is driven by his impassioned call to serve and to share his expertise to help people, as he believes relationships are everyone's most important asset. And I happen to believe that as well.
Well, good. We're in good company.
I'm going to just add that this is the first time that I've done a podcast with a guest, David, in this case, who has actually flown his own plane to come to near my home and then come and stay with me and us for the second time. It's just, I feel like Tim Ferriss, like traveling around the world
Right.
and like meeting people in their homes and or having people come to them. So what a gift. Thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you.
So let's get started. I start every podcast with the same simple question, and that is, how did it happen for you?
Well, you thank you for the introduction. That was very lovely. And thanks again for the second invitation to come, and not only come, but stay with you and your lovely family. You have a great wife, great daughter, and really enjoyed cooking for you guys last night. That was great. And so how did it happen? As you mentioned, I was detailing cars at the age of 15, and I grew up next to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I went to Speedway High School. Our mascot is the Spark Plugs, and you can't make that up. And started washing motorhomes for some legends, A.J. Foyt, Johnny Rutherford, Bobby Rahal, the Unsers, Rick Mears, and really, really great opportunity. It's the IndyCar series and the Holman George family. It's a band of brothers and people that travel from city to city, and it's just a family atmosphere. So everybody kind of takes you in. And as a 16-year-old, it was great when Betty Rutherford would make you hot cocoa because it was a little cold outside, and so that have a passion for racing as a result, and And I was always that curious boy that always looked up in the sky every time I saw an airplane go by. Boy, I'd really be neat to do that one of these days. My mother, who I consider one of my greatest proponents ever. She's an immigrant from Costa Rica. She never made more than $1,000 a month in her life. But yeah, when I'd see an airplane or I'd see a fancy car, she'd say, well, one day you'll have it. One day you have it. You just got to work hard. You just got to work hard. If you work hard, you can do anything you want in life. Very much the immigrant mindset. Well, I believed her, right? And it breaks my heart when I see, another little boy or girl see something, whether it's a car or just something out there in the world. And the parents say, well, no, people like us, we can never have those things. And my mom was complete opposite. My first car was a 1967 Dodge 440 Coronet that was given to me after my grandfather died. And I played hockey in Indiana. There wasn't, hockey wasn't a big sport that far south. And so we had to go up to, what I consider the rich people neighborhood. And we would drive that little 440 Coronet all around the houses because I love to daydream. And, one day, Mom, I'm going to buy you a house like that. One day I'm going to buy you a house like that. And so, just having that support and encouragement just made me believe I could do anything. So I got my pilot's license and I'd been detailing cars. I was doing the IndyCar circuit. And one of my customers, car detailing customer, had a small single engine airplane, and I detailed it. It was kind of loved the environment. I loved being out at the airport. I loved the community of aviation. It just really reminded me of the same community that happens in racing. It's everybody has a similar interest, and everybody genuinely wants everybody to do well. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt in racing. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt in aviation. People are like, hey, weather's a little marginal today. Maybe, do you need a safety pilot with you? Or do you maybe think about going a different day? And so I really enjoyed that community. And the next customer I had, car detailing customer, I had a twin engine airplane. And I was at the airport and one of my best friends called and he said, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm at the airport. I'm cleaning a plane, I'm loving life. And this is great. And he's like, our corporation has a corporate flight department. And I just heard the chief pilot talking about how unhappy he was with the aircraft cleaning. He can't find good aircraft cleaning. Would you be interested in talking to him? I said, yes. And this chief pilot took me under his wing. He taught me the difference between household cleaners and aviation approved cleaners and what to do, what not to do around the airplane. Everybody thinks if you can detail a car, you can detail an airplane. There's a lot of differences, a lot of nuances. If you break something on a car, it's not going to affect safety as much as it would if you were on the airplane. Fall out of the air. Yeah, exactly. And so, and that's really kind of how it happened. And from there, I started doing some planes for NetJets. They sent out an audit. And by this time, I'd really honed in my craft. I'd been going to some really nerdy conventions like the Carpet and Rug Institute and disinfection and mold remediation. I was just very passionate about cleaning. And I'd gotten my pilot's license at the same time so that when NetJet sent out this audit, they never found a provider that was so well educated in their craft. They invited me to Columbus, Ohio, their home base, and basically said, we need somebody like you to open up locations around the country. And that eventually led to around the world. And really just on the shoulders of NetJets, we were able to expand domestically and internationally. And that's really how it happened.
And how does a 15-year-old find his or her way into this club of IndyCar racers? Was there some relationship that you had at that time, or was someone?
Yeah, so I grew up next to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. My best friend was very more passionate than I was about IndyCar racing. And one day he was introduced to the Holman George family, and we were detailing cars. He had his own car cleaning customers. I had my own. And
just like in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, okay. we were in the community. Yeah. So somebody, in the community, right. In the neighborhood.
Okay.
And, and to further that, we became adopted sons of so many, just because we were industrious, we were hardworking. I want to think that we were polite and respectful and super appreciative, and we didn't overstep our boundaries. I'm sure I did a few times, and I was told, and that's okay. That's how you learn. But really, it's just had so many people just take us under their wing and just brought us into their families, metaphorically and and really in true life. It was great. So that's kind of how that manifested itself.
And you told us a little bit about your mom. What about your dad?
My dad. So if my mom taught me how to dream, my dad taught me about quality, and doing the right thing. So he always said the longest distance between 2 points is a shortcut. And he just honed in on quality. He was the guy. He was a jeweler. He was a photographer, and he was a musician. He did all three of these things to make ends meet. And he was regarded as one of the best jewelers in Indianapolis, multiple jewelry companies. Even though he worked full-time at one jewelry store, multiple companies would have him work on custom-made pieces, which he would do at home. And he just would get so angry with me whenever I tried to do a shortcut, or I would just kind of half-ass it the first time. And then he would say, look, it took you twice as long to do this one job. If you just would have done it right the first time, you'd be done and off to the next thing. And my dad's very linear. He doesn't do step 2 until step 1's done and it's done right. And so he had my mom, who's the dreamer and the encourager. You can do anything. And my dad was, the quality guy, reputation, do it right the first time. So it was really a healthy balance of the two.
And what else was 15, 16-year-old David interested in besides hot rod cars and detailing?
I guess growing up the way that we grew up, and then all of a sudden being in this world of very famous people and very wealthy people in the community and very influential people in the community. So there wouldn't be a week that wouldn't go by that I wouldn't see one of my customers in the business journal or in the newspaper or on the news. And it was really overwhelming. So at that time, I just had aspirations that I wanted to be like them. I wanted money, and I wanted the cars, and I wanted the lifestyle and those things. And, right or wrong, I thought that money was gonna, buy you happiness. And then little by little, some of my customers who had adult children, or maybe even children my age who didn't have a relationship with their own children, it just kind of slowly dawned on me, like, oh wait, maybe money's not everything, and maybe it helps certain things, and it gives you some freedom, gives you some opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't have, and some experiences that you otherwise wouldn't have. But maybe there needs to be a healthy balance between aspiration and work-life quality balance. So,
and, well, I'm imagining that at 15, 16, you've got this business going, you got money, in your pocket, certainly more money in your pocket than most of your friends and the kids you're going to school with, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, and even by the time I was a freshman in college, I was making more money than my father, which was
okay. So that's heavy.
And not in like a arrogant way. Right. It was just, I'm 55 years old now. And so in 1984 to 1991, I was charging $150 to detail a car. Well, we're what, 30, 40 years later now? 40 years later, and you can still get a car detailed for $100. Like you can go almost anywhere in the country and get a car detailed for $100. Like, so $150 40 years ago, if I detailed 2 or 3 cars a day, I was making $1,000 easy over a weekend. And, so that was a lot of money. And I was paying my way through school and taking trips and doing some really neat things back at the time. So yeah, it was just a different world. But at the same time, I was just driven to work the next day. And it wasn't so much for the money. It was people were calling me. I needed to get the stuff done and whatnot. And it was just a work ethic and, wanting to get my mom out of this terrible apartment and move her into something nice and buy her some nicer furniture. And, my truck was just an S10 truck. It was brand new, but it was, it was great. Like I thought that was everything at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my interest, was work. In fact, I never spent a weekend at IU Bloomington. I came home every weekend to clean cars. It was only an hour away. So I like to go out. The party might be kind of an extreme word, but I was dating back then, and it was just, nice to go out every Friday and Saturday night in Indianapolis at the bars when I turned 21. But that really, I wanted to get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock the next morning because I had 2 or 3 cars to do, and I still had school to do. So, I was just really driven just to get the next job done.
What kept you in school? Like, I'm trying to think if you're
my lawyer.
Oh, your lawyer. Okay.
It wasn't my dad.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a little shit. I was like, what do I need school for? What do I need college for? Well, I have lead foot, you can say. And there isn't too many states where I haven't gotten a speeding ticket. And he would get me out of my speeding tickets. And he told me, if you quit school, I will no longer represent you and I won't get you out of your tickets.
Oh.
And that was motivation enough for me right there to finish. And you know what? And he was right. I'm glad I did. The confidence that you get from saying you have a degree and you finish school, first of all, it demonstrates that you were responsible enough to go to school, to pass and do all the stuff to do that. And that's something that nobody can ever take away from me. But yeah, it was at what times, if you're 19 years old and you're making $50,000 a year, you're bound to be a little arrogant.
In the 80s.
Yeah. In the 80s, you're like, yeah, what do I need school for? Like, I'm never going to use my degree. I'm never going to use my degree. And, when I got the degree, I was the first person in my family to get a degree on both sides. Right. And so my dad still has the degree hanging up in his office, and I was proud to get it and I was proud to give it to him.
What'd you get the degree in?
Management.
Okay.
So
it's probably something that's come in handy.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if I probably looked back and I looked at some of the shenanigans I pulled, it was kind of like Rodney Dangerfield and Back to School. I had dinners delivered to class, pizzas.
Like Jeff Spicoli.
The whole, like interrupted class, but not like pizzas. Like I've done pizzas like full on, buffet with sides, the whole bit,
unannounced.
Just like unannounced. And yeah, I was.
Did that make you a professor favorite or did that make you?
Both.
Okay. So tell me about
So like a couple of them I even stayed in touch with. They're like, I never had a student like you before or since. And, you're definitely somebody that I will always remember and thank you for, making it not so serious. And, but I had one guy who was always just trying to like teach me a lesson and try to get on me. But I studied because I was jackass, but I still did my work. And so when he would think that I didn't know what was going on, he really kind of wanted to embarrass me in front of the class. And I would just,
okay.
I was a little shit. I'm kind of embarrassed by that, but that, it's who I am. It's part of who I am. I own who I am, but, and I don't know if I necessarily go back and do anything different. But we had fun. I entertained a lot of people. I can tell you that, and, had a lot of fun. And I kind of still am the guy that, what you think I say. And, kind of, I don't do it to hurt anybody.
Think I say.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of like Don Rickles, like if everybody's old enough to remember Don Rickles, that was his whole bit, like he went out to the crowd and he made fun of your ethnicity, your accent, your heritage, but.
And then he was your best buddy afterwards.
Yeah.
Is what I heard.
And you always wanted to be ripped by Don Rickles like that. Oh, Don Rickles, he really got me. So, I never do it to hurt anybody. And and everybody knows that it's just in jest, but yeah, so I did the work to do it, and I had fun. And I still, like I said, I kind of, it's what is it? It's ready, aim, shoot.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shoot, aim, ready. I do it the other way.
Okay, so you graduate with this degree in management. You've been cleaning cars in the weekend. You've been being what you think is what I say kind of guy.
Yeah.
In college, you get out, and then what?
And then I had a decision to make: either keep going IndyCar racing, or focus on building a business. And I thought IndyCar racing, as much fun as it was and as sexy as it was, it's just there was 12, 15 races a year, and didn't see how you took it vertically. I didn't see how you took it horizontally. Like, what was I going to do? NASCAR next? I mean, just where do you go from there? So then I chose auto detailing. I just focused my efforts on auto detailing, and I had the opportunity to buy a parking management contract at a Class A building in downtown Indianapolis. Just so happened.
What does that mean? Like, you run the parking garage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I bought the contract. It was all valet parking, and it was the #1 law firm in Indianapolis. Our 2 state senators were there. Crystal DeHaan, who was the owner of RCI, which is Resort Condominiums Resort. I mean, it's a Class A building with really unbelievable,
top-tier tenants.
Tenants and clients, and several of the lawyers from that law firm went on to be the mayor and the governor. I mean, it was just pretty amazing. So I did that for several years, and then that all happened while I was continuing to build my car detailing business and get my private pilot's license. And then that's when I want to say it was in 1998 or 99, probably 98 or 99, when NetJets sent out that audit. And then from there, I set up an apartment down in Orlando, and then 9/11 hit, and I couldn't run that business remotely like I had been. I had 2 small children, and I was spending time between Indianapolis and Orlando. But then 9/11 came, and my insurance went from $8,000 a year to $48,000. And I had to let go of one of my team members and just stay down there full time. It was either that or close the business. I couldn't cash flow the insurance plus payroll. And so we made a decision that I would do that. And then a year and a half later, my family joined me. And what that did is it allowed me to open up in Atlanta, Palm Beach, and Orlando. And then one location turned into 5, 6, 7. And, the journey was just really, it was $100 a month to $1 million a month in less than 7 years. The growth was just dynamic and incredible. And that was both international as well as domestic.
So you mentioned early that, some people think detailing a plane is like detailing a car, detailing anything. And obviously it's not. You talk about this audit with NetJets that was sort of the catalyst for this, for your company. What is, for people who don't know, what is the main difference? I'm thinking like most people probably don't even think that planes get washed.
Right.
It's just like most people only have commercial air experience, right? The plane shows up. Why would you wash it? Right? It's like,
well, so airplanes are made out of aluminum, and if you service them and they don't get corrosion, they'll practically live forever. Okay, you got to get new. You got to change the oil. You got to change the engines. You got to change parts and whatnot. And to highlight this, the chief pilot for Eli Lilly went to the Air Force. His basic training was in Texas. 40 years later, his son went to the same branch, to the same base to do his training and flew the same plane that his dad flew in.
No way.
Yeah. And so you can't use household cleaners on airplanes that you can grab Dawn liquid soap and wash your car. Well, you don't do that for an airplane. Instead of spending $8 a gallon for soap, you have to spend $48 a gallon for soap. And really the reason is because of the testing and the validation to make sure that whatever you put on the airplane is not only going to not hurt the paint or the aluminum, but also the windows, do anything to the antennas, and, just cause any of those type of issues, which could be a safety issue for any airplane.
Yeah. Okay. You all right, Steve? You want to sit with you?
Here, bud. Just settle down for a little bit. Okay. This is Steve, everybody.
Welcome, Steve.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. You go down to, if I heard you right, you start this business, 9/11 happens, so all the aviation sort of stopped. And everything gets scrutinized.
Yeah, I think we didn't work for like at least 45 days.
45 days.
Because I think it was 2 weeks, right, before commercial aviation was able to start flying again. If I remember correctly, TSA was invented. That's the birth of TSA. And then, so the FAA first focused on commercial aviation. And then second, started figuring out private aviation.
Okay. So your one-man show?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. One-man show. Yeah, I guess I did. I forgot about that. I still had employees in Indianapolis working in the parking garage, but yeah, no, I was a one-man show after 9/11. Holy cow.
And you completely abandoned the auto detailing then at that time?
Yeah. Well, no. I kept that business for maybe another 5 or 6 years and eventually gifted it to one of my team members there.
Okay.
So.
And in your description of that time frame, you mentioned 2 kids, you got married. When did that all?
Well, that was 1996. We got married, started having kids and all that fun stuff.
Okay. 96. All right. So you were 30 or so? Trying to do math.
1986. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. 30 years old.
All right. So you go from, what'd you say, $100 a month to $1 million a month in 7 years.
Yeah.
You got all these different locations.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling? How are you managing this?
Well, how am I feeling? I'm feeling great. I was, hindsight's always 2020. I was focused on top line revenue versus profit. And then I was always focused on, building my infrastructure. I always knew that I wanted a $20, $30 million company. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, I needed the infrastructure to do that. So when the revenue presented itself and I had a revenue mark and I had a profit mark, whenever I went above that profit mark consistently for a couple months, I would then hire some more infrastructure, middle management per se, director of marketing, director of customer relations. So as we got bigger and, we surpassed 100 team members, I needed a full-time HR person. Well, then I needed an accounting person. Well, then that person needed an invoicing person that did nothing but invoices. And then we built software, and that was the game changer for us, is the software that we developed. It was not only a game changer for us, but it was a game changer for NetJets in the industry. So typically 8% of your fleet is in maintenance. The other 92% is flying. Well, the model back then was to get the plane clean while it was in maintenance. Kind of makes sense.
Sure.
Well, maintenance and cleaning just don't mix. Mechanics don't want you around. You can't really wash an airplane while mechanics working on it. And then the moment that the airplane's ready, the customer, the corporate charter department or corporate flight department, they want their airplane. They got to go. It's like, when do you clean the airplane? So I went to NetJets and said, hey, how are you managing your fleet? We have this spreadsheet. We look at it every day. We spend probably 6, 7, 8 hours. And at the end of the day, we assign work to it. And said, well, what if I created a database that was all web enabled and it just automatically told you it was what it needed when it was needed? We set the parameters and we worked the puzzle backwards. And they're like, wow, if you can do that, that'd be great. And I said, but then you give keys to cleaning vendors around the country, and we clean the 92% of the airplanes, not the 8% of the airplanes that are in the fleet or in maintenance.
Oh, okay. So it's just turning that thinking right on its head, basically.
Yeah. And they were like, and now we're unencumbered. We're unencumbered with maintenance. we're unencumbered with crews. The crews get in at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, sometimes 5. They go to the hotel. They wait for the next day to go fly. Well, now we're not being interrupted by maintenance or trying to work around anybody. We can get in and we can get out and do our job. And that did really well. And then that software, I just kept expanding it. Back in 2002, 2003, 2004, there wasn't, the iPhone hadn't even come out, right? I mean, at the beginning, it's really kind of came out. I forget what year it came out, but there wasn't all these apps. So there wasn't like an online time clock. So we created one for our business because we had 37 locations, and planes would get cleaned at night. Our guys were sleeping during the day, and our customers at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning would want to know, hey, what was done? We don't want to wake up your guys. So you can go on the software and look what was done. Well, we could go on our online time clock and see who was clocked in and who wasn't. Okay. Right. So we always had our finger on the pulse, and then it expanded to inventory management and all this stuff we just wrote ourselves. We just wrote the software ourselves. And I went to SAP and I went to Oracle, and they both said, oh, we can do it. SAP, I think, wanted $700,000 and Oracle wanted $1 million. And then the kicker was they get to keep the data.
Oh, great.
I'm like, no, that's my data. I understand, right? But I just couldn't afford that. But I could afford, a programmer for, at that time, $60,000 or whatever we were doing. And that was a huge difference. And then, like any business, I mean, your business is about people, right? And so just, I don't necessarily subscribe to the belief that you try to hire the right person. I think you hire the person that has really good values and good work ethic and are genuinely good people. And they might hire into one specific job, but then you hone in on what they really do well and what they don't do well. And like, take them out of the jobs where they don't do well and put them in the jobs that they do well, right? And while the revenue is impressive, right? It's a neat thing to say, well, I want $1 million a month, in 7 years from $100 a month. What I'm more proud of is the fact that our turnover was 18%. And an industry where your turnover is 100 to 300%. And so when you're not turning over people and you're doing a service type business, the quality's there, and it makes it easier to manage. So we did several things. We did a thing called the Colby Index, and we did that for every team member. When you help people understand who they are and what they, how they would best achieve results, it's kind of eye-opening for them. Usually they haven't gone through this type of exercise.
How would you describe Colby? To people who are listening? How would you describe what it is? KOLBE.
Yeah. So Kathy Colby created this index. It's not like a personality test. Personality tests will change with events in your life, including going to the military or loss or divorce. Yeah, trauma. The Colby Index is how you naturally, would do things. It's your driving instincts. And so how I always described Colby was, if you and I were to clean this room, you might be very linear in the way you do things. You might start from the top and work your way down. You might dust, and then the last thing you do is vacuum. Well, that's not me. I'm scatterbrained. I'm like a squirrel, ice cream. But when we get done, I guarantee that the room's going to be just as clean as the way you did it. And the epiphany, the aha for me is, I love my dad. I love my dad. And, but he is a linear guy, and he just was always like, focus on one thing before you do the next thing. Well,
A to B to C.
Yeah. And if you love somebody and you respect them and you try to do it their way and it doesn't work for you, then there's something wrong with you. Right. And my dad got results this way, but I couldn't get it. I just, I probably would have been, diagnosed with ADD, back then. And I couldn't do it. And so I kind of always beat myself up. So I was 28 or 29 years old when I did the Colby Index. and it told you how to get your best results. And it said, do 10 things at once. That's how you're going to get your best results. The way to get your least results is to focus on one thing and just do one thing until you're done with it and do the next. Well, here I am. I'm almost a 30-year-old grown man, and I get the freedom to be myself. And it was like, it was game changing for me. It was eye opening. It's one of the tools in the toolbox. Sometimes you need a hammer. Sometimes you need a screwdriver. Sometimes you need a wrench. And that particular tool in the toolbox of life it just had a really big impact on me. And I wanted to share that with my team. And I don't really like the word employees. I have no problem saying the F word, but the E word, it seems really offensive to me. So I like team members. I don't like the word employees. And so I just would always share this with my team, and then we would try to put them in a task that they really excelled at doing. They always say, well, nobody will care about the business like the owner, right? Like nobody will do that. And that's such bullshit, because the guy who's in the inventory room, he knows the part number for damn near everything that's in there by heart. He knows where to get it. He knows who to call. He knows how to fix it. He needs to know everything. He just knows everything. It's what he does. And well, I couldn't tell you the first part number that we have in our company, right?
Yeah.
So in that particular task, he cares more about that than anybody else in the company. Well, when you build up a company like that, where people care more about their task within the organization than anybody else, well, then you've dispelled that myth that only the owner will care as much as, because he's the owner. And that's really how we built it.
By creating an ownership mentality based on putting you in a position that is naturally aligned with who you are and what you're good at. Is that?
Yeah. And then, but take it to the next step.
Yeah.
If you're doing something that you're good at and you enjoy doing, you're kind of pretty happy.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're doing a task that you're not very happy with, you're kind of frustrated. And we just had a group of a lot of happy people. Now, it wasn't perfect. We had our days. We were like a family, there was some infighting between brothers and sisters. But at the same time, there was times where we made fun of our weaknesses. Everybody made fun of my everybody knew my weaknesses, right? Like if you want to talk to David and you want his undivided attention, you'd say, hey, I really need your fact finding time. If you're a squirrel brain right now, like just tell me when you're ready to listen to me.
Yeah.
And we'll deal with it. Like, okay. And it was great. So we knew our strengths and we also knew our weaknesses.
So you said that you hate the F word, and I'm assuming that you mean family applied to
No. I'm thinking the F word is really, the F word,
the
right?
F word. Okay.
They said, I have no problem saying the F word, right? Which is supposed to be offensive in our culture, but I don't think it is anymore. But I'm really offended by the E word, which is employees.
Okay.
So
it's, so a couple things on that. First of all, I do want to get your take on team versus family, because a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs say, or a lot of companies say, hey, we're a family here.
Right.
You mentioned team, which I like as well. I don't like employees, and I don't like saying that person worked for me.
Right. I hate that.
Yeah. I almost always say I work with David, for example, because that's really what I do. Work for me.
Right.
We work together.
It doesn't happen without everybody else.
Yeah. So let's tell me what you think about the family thing when it comes to business.
So I think it's a double-edged sword. It definitely is a double-edged sword, and there just needs to be some boundaries. So the good part of the family is, you genuinely care for the person that's seated next to you or within the organization. And if there's a tragic event or there's any kind of loss, we all share in the loss. We kind of come together.
Yeah.
We all have our own examples with that. I think some of I necessarily wouldn't say the bad or the drawbacks, might be a better word, is that you could overstep your boundaries. And it's not my job to fix what's going on in your personal life, nor is it your job to listen to what's going on in my personal life.
Right.
And I think a lot of CEOs and business owners share a lot about what's happening in their life, but and everybody kind of knows all about what's going on in that person's life, and you may not know as much as what's going on in somebody else's personal life, and there just needs to be some boundaries in all that. So,
okay, yeah, I think it's easy to say, "Hey, we're a family here."
mm-hmm.
It's much easier to say than it is to do because, well, let's face it. So when it's family, you're sort of entitled to a position, right? I can't non-family you.
Right.
You're a family. And in business, sometimes I have to non-family you, or you want to non-family me.
Right.
And that's got to be okay.
Right.
That's why I kind of like the team thing. I'm a kind of words matter to me sort of person. So I kind of like the team thing because when the team doesn't want you anymore, you leave the team. And when you don't want to be on the team anymore, you
right.
leave the
No,
team
is great because you're a coach. I've always thought more of myself as a coach. I believe I like that assessment and metaphor better. And that's why I like team members.
Yeah.
We're a team, we're a coach, we're going to have a session. We called some of our things, 101, 201, 301, 401. But I invested a lot into the team. Once a year we had an annual convention per se that brought in the managers and the assistant managers of every location. And we talked about personal development. We didn't talk anything that had to do with our industry. So it was usually a 2.5 day retreat. It was 3 days, 2 nights, usually in Florida. You'd be surprised how many people have never seen the ocean. So we would just do half day kind of, team building exercises and, give them a half day to go to the beach, or we go to the Blue Man Group, or, just do something that was experiential. And what was really great about that is if you had somebody in Denver and you had somebody in Florida and they each had the same problem, because they were in silos, they would come either to me or somebody that was, the director of operations, right? But then when they all got to meet each other and they were more than just a voice, they had faces that they could see because they sat next to each other on the beach, or they sat next to each other at the Blue Man Group. Well, now they were like, hey, I got, blue juice. And if you remember, blue juice is that blue toilet fluid water that was in airplanes way back. I got this. It was very caustic and it would stain the carpet or whatever. How are you getting it out? And so now you had this cross fertilization that was happening, and it was all inspired by the relationships that were built at these team building, sessions that happen once a year. And then, that's where it just gets really, really kind of fun. And then if somebody was going on vacation, we would send a team member from one location to another location because we really preached, processes that were duplicatable, scalable, practical, and sustainable. And so, I was always an admirer of McDonald's and McDonald's University. It's really pretty incredible. Starbucks did the same thing. And so I'd always say, we got to do this, the McDonald's Starbucks model. Like if it's got to work here, it's got to work everywhere. Right. If it works one time, it's got to work 1,000 times. If it works at one location, it's got to work at 1,000 locations, and it's got to be practical. Like, as much as I wish I had a campus, and I had a cafeteria and it was free and you could share a work day and bring your dog to work. That's just not practical in our business, right?
Right. Work from home's not practical.
Yeah. I've got a jet to clean, but I'm working from home tonight, right? So, and then it's got to be sustainable. So it's just got to endure over the long term. And people really, they embrace that, and once you gave them those founding principles, well, then that's how they would start to think, and they would talk to each other about that. And it was just a really, really, really good time.
How have you found the best way for you to, as you're building these relationships with your team members, as you're really inviting them to thrive with their unique ability, let's say, to use
use unique ability or God-gifted gifts. It just depends, if you're a spiritual person, or your Christian world calls it, your God-given gift, and people in the secular world would call it, their unique ability or their special talent. So
yeah, I've been in the waste business most of my career. We're going into, we're basically doing what you're doing with an airplane, but we're doing it inside of a factory, right? With a machine or a tank or whatever. Right. And a lot of people think, well, who would want to do that kind of work, And I say, well, there's a lot of people that want to do that kind of work because there's a mission behind that work. There is an outcome that you can be proud of because you walk into a situation.
Right.
And I'm curious how you think about that with what you've been doing and with your team members. Like, because same thing, like, hey, we're just cleaning planes, we're cleaning cars.
Right.
It's like, how do you get,
it's a great question. It's a great question. So I think it's multifaceted. Number one, there's always value when, you do something that maybe you don't want to do, but then after you do it, it's like, oh, okay, that looks good. Let's take making your bed. Like, it's easier not to make your bed, right? But it's easy to make your bed. And then when you do it and you come back to your room, like, it looks nice, right? So starting something that's dirty and leaving when it looks clean, that in itself is cathartic, right? It's cathartic. It's physical work and it makes you feel good, The second thing is you're in a community, and I've never called aviation an industry. It's an institution, right? And you think about what aviation has done. Stop the Second World War. It's, just taking products and food and people from every facet of the world to another facet. Like, you couldn't do that on a train. Like, it's just amazing.
It's had to have raised global GDP much more than anything
right. And
else.
Then, so you're in this institution of people that are good quality people, right? And so you're appreciated. Like, we always want to be appreciated. Like, everybody likes a pat on the back, right?
Sure.
And so you're getting that pat on the back from the customer, and then you're getting paid for it. Pretty basic, kind of stuff. So, starting out with something that's dirty, being appreciated, being in an environment where you are appreciated, you're considered a team member. Like, we jokingly call people out when they say employees, and, we tell our customers, like, if you're looking for a vendor, you got the wrong company. If you want a partner, hey, great. We'll be your partner, but we don't want to be a vendor. Vendors are commoditized. Employees are commoditized. They're not treated very well. Usually an owner of a company that has employees are like, we'll just find somebody else to do it. Well, if you have some investment into this person and they're a good person, then I feel like it's your job as the coach to put them in the right role. You look at, use a football metaphor. If you've got, a team set up for, if your offense is set up for the West Coast offense, but you don't have the players to fulfill that, well, maybe we need to run the ball. Maybe we just need to get some guys, got some huge guys up there that can block. Like, let's shift and change. Like, this is what I would like to do, but this is the team that I have. So I'm going to build my strategy around the team. And I just think it's a switch. And I think it's very powerful, and people recognize that, and they're like, okay, well, I want to stay here. I want to stay in an organization that does something like that.
Okay. And you mentioned that when you took the Colby, you realized that you had the freedom to be who you are. And I think you also mentioned that you got this thing up, I think 37 locations was the last number I think that you used talking to me.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what did you do with all that freedom?
Well, I started to write a book called When Would You Stop? I never finished that book. It probably needs to be finished. But, my thought about that is, when you first do the Colby, you want to first delegate away all your weaknesses, right? And focus on your strengths. Well, then I always wondered what happens if you start delegating away your strengths, when would you stop? And, that was really kind of the path that, I started to go down. And, I think that's when you could create something very, very, very meaningful, and so that you could have more time to spend with your family. And you talked about family earlier, and do some of those things. I probably, I don't want to say cultish like, but I was probably a little bit unbalanced in some of that thinking, thinking that, well, I'm terrible at QuickBooks. I'm terrible at invoices, and I'm terrible at this and that. So I'm going to let my CFO worry about the finances, right? So I'm going to delegate that all away. Well, some things you just, as an entrepreneur and business owner, you just have to have your finger on. Money's one of them. Mm-hmm. And so there's like anything else, there's a healthy balance and there's two extremes. And I probably was too extreme in some of that thinking. And whenever there's an extreme in the marketplace, there's always seems to be a correction. So that's, I just think, I think hard work and working and staying busy is a good thing.
Can we talk about the correction?
Sure. So first of all, I was dealt some personal news that was very difficult for me to accept, and I didn't process it very well. And they say that your measure of a person is revealed when things go wrong, and I'm kind of ashamed about some of the way that I handled some things that happened in my marriage when things went wrong, and I just went to really kind of a dark place. In the midst of that dark place, I had a team member who had committed tortious interference. And
what does that mean?
He was working for me on my payroll while working for another company at the same time.
Okay.
And so that led to a lawsuit, which led to basically a settlement, an out-of-court settlement. But it came with if you're late, it triggered a $500,000 penalty and a summary judgment. And so we were probably 2.5 years into this settlement, and my office manager had missed a payment by accident. She recognized it maybe a week afterwards. We tried to make it right. For whatever reason, I was served at an address, a former office address where I wasn't at anymore in Indianapolis. Everything moved to Orlando. There was a hearing without representation, and they got a summary judgment. I woke up one morning and all my accounts were frozen, and it triggered a bankruptcy. And
hold on just a second. The tortious interference, that was the team member.
Well, we can call him an employee. Okay. He wasn't a team member.
He was double dipping. He was working for you and working for someone else.
And then he was bringing customers over and bringing employees over.
How did you end up paying a settlement? Shouldn't it have been the other way around?
No, because we hired him from the other company. I had no idea what he was doing.
So he continued to work for his previous employer.
Right.
So he's like a mole. You hired him.
Yeah, I don't know if it was.
I thought you said he was taking your customers to the other.
Yeah, no, that's what.
Oh, so he was working.
Yeah.
To grow your business at the expense of his employer, his other employer.
Right.
That he never severed ties with.
Right.
But you didn't know anything about this.
Of course not. The other company was a known litigious company, and this was out in Las Vegas. Okay. And actually, somebody you interviewed, Sam Schmidt, is a really good friend of mine through auto racing. So I called Sam and I'm like, "Hey, Sam, I need a lawyer in Las Vegas. Here's the deal. My guys want to hire this gentleman in Las Vegas." And we had MGM, which was a great account. It was a great account out there. But this young man pretty much had everybody else. He's like, "We want to hire this guy. The problem is he works for company X." Like, okay. Well, I really don't want to hire him. And they're like, no. Like, we're going to grow the business. We really need to hire this guy. The guy's not happy there. He wants to leave. He wants to come work with us. He's heard about us, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. So I call Sam. I tell Sam the story. And he's like, well, there's a boy that's, and my daughter and his son kind of fancy each other, like 10 years old, maybe. Like, it's a kind of a cute little, I wouldn't even call it a first love, but like, whatever, first flirting thing. And he goes, but let me talk to him. So I he called him. Long story longer, I talked to the lawyer. Then I handed the lawyer off to my guys. Guys, if you want to hire him, you use this lawyer to hire this guy. Well, my guys didn't follow through, plain and simple. And for whatever reason. And this guy started working, I want to say with us, but I'm going to say for us in this instant. And he hadn't resigned. And then he was doing work for us. And then he was bringing employees from the other company to our company. And that's not anything it's had nothing to do with my growth strategy. I've never done anything like that before or since. And then when the other company found out, they sued. We settled out of court. And then 2.5 years later, the payment was late.
Okay.
And then that's what triggered the summary judgment, the $500,000 penalty. And so now you're thinking 2000 and I want to call it 2012 or 2013. Gas, was expensive at that time. We were starting to have, the financial, crisis, and people weren't flying private jets. And, we were running on really thin margins, and we had to file bankruptcy. The company filed bankruptcy, which lasted close to 3 years. And at the end, the judge didn't confirm my plan or the other person's plan, but the other person was able to go to the bank that held my SBA loan and buy my assets. And that's how I pretty much lost the U.S. company.
The other person being, I'm not sure I understood that. So
the other company?
The other company.
The company, yeah, they were able to go and buy the bank note because I had nothing at that point to.
Okay. Did you ever find out why this person chose to do that? What was his motivation?
So, here's one thing that I've learned. Like, most of us have had children, right? And you can never answer a why question. Perfect example. Your son or daughter's like, why is the sky blue? Well, because God made it blue. Well, why did God make the sky blue, right? And you just keep going. Like, at some point, you can't answer the question anymore. There's not an answer.
Right.
And I will tell you, I went through that. And I did that to myself for 7 years. A lot of self-pity, a lot of self-loathing. Like, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody do that? I'm a little embarrassed that it took me that long to kind of like go through my journey of grief. I've always said pain is not a contest and grief has its own timeline. I wish my timeline wasn't so long. But there's a question that seems that can't be answered is the why question. And so I've kind of given up on the why question. I think the question you have to ask is, what can you do about it? What can you learn from it? And what can you do to make sure it doesn't happen again? And once that kind of started to shift, then I saw, a huge shift in my personal life and in my business life. And, bad things happen to good people every day. And one of my mentors said, if money can solve it, it's not a problem. And it's so true. And as we sit today doing our podcast, there's a husband and wife that's been married 40, 50, 60 years, and they're sitting in somebody's doctor's office and being told that one of them has ALS, one of them has stage 4 cancer, or, there's no heart, there's nothing that can be done, say your goodbyes, settle your affairs. And I had a money problem, my business, went away. I'm not going to say it was taken away. It was just, there's some things I could have done better, smarter. I could have protected myself. I could have been more involved, if, in hiring this person. I could have been more involved in making sure that payment was done every month. I mean, I can't blame anybody except myself, right? The buck stops here, right? The buck stops here. And I chose to delegate away some of those things and didn't have my finger on the pulse because I was too busy trying to operate in my unique abilities and my God giftedness. And I think sometimes you have to take out the trash, and you have to wash the dishes, and you have to go to the grocery store, and maybe some of those things aren't fun for you, but you still have to do them, still got to do laundry. Yeah. Right. So that's part of my journey as well.
So your bank accounts are frozen. That leads to ultimately you lose the business or part of.
Mm-hmm. I was going through a divorce. The divorce precipitated the financial loss, but that was no fun either. I mean, divorce is horrible. It's just so disruptive and hurtful to, the family unit, the children, and, so
how'd you get out of it?
I'm sorry?
How'd you get out of it? And
get out of what?
I don't mean the financial part of it, but this why thing that you were asking yourself.
Oh.
You've now learned not to ask why, but
you
mentioned it was a 7-year period. So that's an abyss.
Right.
It's pretty deep and pretty wide.
Yeah.
How did you get out of it?
Well, I figured if Tony Soprano could go see a therapist every week, I could too. And so
you got your own Dr. Melfi.
I got my own Dr. Melfi. Her name's Kim, and she's a gift. And I had some really, really amazing people. Another lady was Teresa. She still is a coach. She would always check in like every 3 months. She always set up a call and would just talk to me. And it's like, one day we're going to have this story to tell. It's going to be a great story, and I heard her and for a long time, I just didn't believe it because I was just wallowed in self-pity and self-loathing. But I kind of knew she was right. I just didn't know how to get out of it. And, a lot of, like you said, like pain is not a contest and grief has its own timeline. You see people who have, been married for 20 years and, they lose a spouse and they never get married again. Mm-hmm. And you have another situation where somebody's been married and they had 4 years to say goodbye because they knew, and they sat and cried with their spouse for 4 years. And then a year later, they're dating again. Well, their process took 4 years, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right. So
it just seems like it was fast.
Seems like it fast. Yeah. It seemed like it might be inappropriate for somebody else, but like it wasn't inappropriate. Like, the other spouse is like, don't be a martyr to me. Like, go find companionship if you have that opportunity, and don't feel guilt doing that. You have the freedom to love somebody, love them as much as you love me. And I think that's what a special gift. So, for whatever reason, mine took 7 years and, kind of there's only one thing you didn't mention in the introduction is because I had this extra time on my hands, I was able to solve a cleaning problem for one of my airline customers, which developed into a patent and, is now its own business, So I started a business with a really good friend of mine and we clean, it's called APUs, auxiliary power units. So if I was to talk to everybody like a 5-year-old, you have 2 engines on the airplane that usually hang on the wing. And make the airplane fly. Well, there's another jet engine in the back of the airplane, and it's kind of like the generator that runs your house or your motorhome or your boat, and it's responsible for water, for heat and air conditioning and lights and everything inside the airplane.
All the internal stuff.
Yeah, all the internal stuff. And so the fix is the way you're supposed to clean it takes about 4 hours by the manufacturer's guidelines. And, I was able to invent a way to do it within 30 minutes and to do it in an environmentally, friendly closed loop system. And, that's really taken off and that probably wouldn't have happened. I probably would have delegated that away, And so now, my US business has come back and my European business is doing really well. And I have this amazing, new business with, cleaning aircraft engines. And it's just, and I found a really, a great lady I've been with for 4 years. We're now engaged. And, it's just all those things wouldn't have happened if I would have taken 7 years to go through my pity party and figure things out.
Right.
And I think there's this whole self-discovery, like I'd already kind of known that money doesn't buy happiness. It gives you freedom and freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And that's what I appreciate about money. but it it really helped me hone in on who your true friends are. Like when you have a couple airplanes, you have a lot of friends. When you have, you know, 2 homes in Palm Beach and 1 in Orlando on the golf course, you have a lot of friends. And when kind of tragedy strikes, you kind of find, like everything else, you find out who your real friends are. And
I was going to ask you about that, David. Were there a lot of people who weren't supportive or just were ambivalent, or maybe they didn't know what to do, so they did
I think
nothing?
the last, I really do. Like usually if I see a child that has some type of infliction, I'll ask the mom or dad, may I ask, I go, yeah, my son or daughter's autistic or has Down syndrome or whatnot. And I think that's a very uncomfortable question, to ask somebody. And I think every parent would rather you ask than stare, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people just didn't know what to do. And, and I felt a lot of shame. It was pretty public, I had a pretty spectacular rise and an even more spectacular fall. And
public, like in
very public.
Nah,
just public within my industry.
Oh,
the institution. Okay. Like everybody knew. We'd grown this company to the largest private detailing company in the world. And everybody knew about the lawsuits, and then people were vying for the scraps, when it all kind of torn apart. And so
so I imagine before this, people were like, they wanted David Allen around. They wanted to be a part of you. They wanted to say that.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's intoxicating. I'm going to look you straight in the eye and tell you, like, it's hard to separate as a human being. I've seen these journeys of successful kids that are entertainers and whatnot. And, they look back and they're like, gosh, I'm really embarrassed by this or that. I was kind of a jerk. And I can look you in the eye and tell you the same thing. I was just a little embarrassed. Like I felt my values were there, and I felt like I really treated people, and I really honored people's, true values and what they did really well with the Colby. But when somebody's always, putting you on a pedestal, the pedestal keeps getting higher and higher, and then the further you fall.
Well, when, I always think too, like when people say yes to you all the time,
exactly,
it kind of makes you feel like
you're the smartest guy in the room.
Right. And that they're saying yes to you because they really believe it's
True.
Not that they're being paid to say yes, or not because they have some type of an affiliation that it reminds me sort of a totally different story than yours, but like a year ago when Will Smith went up and slapped Chris Rock, right? I think it was Chris Rock.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and I don't know these guys, at all. I mean, but I think to myself, that's so out of character for Will Smith. But you know what? Maybe Will Smith's been told that Will Smith can do anything for so long that you get told yes all the time. You think there is no, there is no boundary. There is no, yeah. Anyway,
and I feel like, so, and I have, that was a tough situation. It was a tough situation for both of them. It was just a joke, right? Like it was just a joke. Will Smith felt like he had to honor his wife, and I know he would take that back. He would take it back. He probably feels a lot of shame and about that, and the families had to heal from it, and he'll be wrongly identified for that slap, the rest of his life. But that's not. Deep down, that's just not who he is. As a person.
And
right. And I know that's not what you're advocating, but I understand both sides of it now, right? Where before I probably would have been anti Will Smith,
Yeah.
But when you kind of go through some of those ups and downs, and to your point, where people were always putting on a pedestal and saying, this or that, and people were, I was being invited, like, as I talked about that 7-year run. All of our invitation was by growth. I never knocked on a door. I never handed out a flyer. I never opened up a location. I never did the Field of Dreams. If we build it, they will come. We were invited to every customer that we took care of. So when your growth is by invitation only, and people want you to speak and they want you to do this. And, there's a couple books where you're a chapter in each book. And, it gets a little intoxicating.
Yeah.
It goes to your head, plain and simple, and I'm sad about that. I'm a little embarrassed about it. And I lost some really good friends, in the midst of my downward spiral. And, those friends are not coming back. And I'm really sad about that, And now I have a different life now, and all we can do is look forward. And I have, like I said, a really special lady, and I've got 2 grown children, and I'm very proud of both of them. And my life is pretty great. I'm in Waukesha, Wisconsin. I'm on a lake, and my dog's out there swimming like a crazy man. And I flew my little single engine putt-putt airplane in here, and I'm going to fly it out in about an hour or so. And I'm going to go to Oshkosh Air Show. And, it just goes back to kind of how this whole thing started, in a single engine airplane. And, what a great opportunity to meet people like yourself and your wife and your daughter, and to meet other people in the industry and the institution that we call aviation. It's just, I'm living a great life. I really am. And I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm trying to parlay those into not doing those again in the future. Right.
Yeah.
And all you can do is, apologize to the people you hurt, and just be the best version of yourself going forward.
What is the best version of you going forward?
The best version of me is not taking anything too seriously. Humor is one of my cornerstones of my values. So is loyalty. So is, integrity. And, while Will Smith had a momentary lapse of judgment, I did too. And I just,
Who hasn't?
right. Well, I don't know. I feel like I might beat myself up more than other people do, but I just want to live a life of integrity, and do the right thing for everybody. It's a win-win-win. It kind of all goes back to what Mom said, right? You take care of your people will take care of the customers, and the customers will take care of the bottom line.
Right.
And she was not a sophisticated woman. She was a good woman. She didn't know anything about business. And I told you her income, but she knew how to treat people. And that's what she taught me. My dad taught me how to do the right thing, do quality. And I think it's a winning combination.
Well, you definitely had, your parents definitely gave you both sides, right? The dream side and what did you call it? The dream side and the quality side. I love that. So many people kids don't get that. They don't have parents that give them either one of those. And maybe it didn't feel like it all the time, but it sure feels like it built a very special person as a result of having
thank you.
both of those. And having spent like 2 days, basically 2 days with you now, one back in 2020 and then now in 2023, I think what I come out of this with is not only, how special, driven, caring, and thoughtful you are, which is amazing. But I also go to like what you were just talking about. Everybody's had some downfall in their life. Most people don't have it public. So it happens. They know it happened. They know they could have done something better or whatever, and they just hide that. You were not in a position to hide it, maybe, but the fact that you are so willing to talk about it, and not just all the shit, but I probably never would have thought of this APU thing or whatever, right, if I had been me just being, and I think, I don't know, nobody wants to go through 7 years of crap in their life, but it's what you do with it. I think that says more about who you are and you're doing something really cool with it. And You also made dinner for us last night.
But I hope it was good.
Risotto. Yeah, it was awesome. And risotto is not my go-to thing. And it was fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And he did it. Yeah. He kicked us all out after I made him make dinner for us. But, so David, Allen, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure and a joy getting to know you. I'm glad we finally got this done. Is there anything that I haven't asked you or that you want to share with me or everybody?
One thing only. I was voted best dressed in high school. I like to tell that to everybody.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I was voted best dressed in high school.
So he had a T-shirt on before, and he's like, I don't feel right.
Exactly.
Where I just kept the same crappy shirt that I was wearing. So
yeah, that's it.
That comes out.
Yeah, that came out.
That
comes out. Well, thanks for having me.
Sure. What about if anyone wants to contact you? Do you want to give them any contact?
Yeah. So my email is david@allengroupe.com, and that's ALLENGROUPE. So there's an E at the end of group. It's like the French spelling of group. The website's the same. It's allengroupe.com, ALLEN, and it looks like groupie.com.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And to everybody listening, I want you to maximize your greatness today, please, and make your future your property, something that you are very, very proud to own.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the show. And before you go, I just have 3 requests for you. 1, if you like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing or following the podcast on whatever podcast platform you prefer. If you're really into it, leave me a review, write something nice about me, give me 5 stars or whatever you feel is most appropriate. Number 2, I've got a book. It's called Owner Shift, How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. It's an Amazon bestseller. And I'd love for you to read it or listen to it on Audible or wherever else, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can get it everywhere. If you're looking for inspiration that will help you unlock your greatness and potential, order or download it today so that you can have your very own copy. And if you get it, please let me know what you think. Number 3, my newsletter. I do a newsletter every Thursday, and I talk about things that are interesting to me or I give more information about the podcast and the podcast guests that I've had and the experiences that I've had with them. You can sign up for the podcast today at my website, which is my name, MikeMalatesta.com. You do that right now, put in your email address, and you'll get the very next issue. The newsletter is short, thoughtful, and designed to inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you.